Okay, can I have your attention, please? We'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everybody to Committee of Adjustment for this evening. We have a fairly heavy agenda with 11 items, so we'll move through it as best we can. For those of you who do have a cell phone, and I'm sure we pretty much all do, I'm going to ask you to verify, double check right now that it's put on Do Not Disturb. And if for some reason your phone rings during the meeting, please don't answer it until you are beyond earshot of the room. Now, members of the public who are with us this evening, if you have an interest in any particular application and you'd like to receive written notice of any decisions that may result, it's important to fill your name in on the sign-up sheets that are located at the back of the room. So as you come into the room, there's a little table immediately to your right, and every application will have a sign-up sheet. So it's important to fill your name in that sheet before you leave. So I'll now read the following notice. The notice of decision for the applications we review this evening will only be forwarded to those who have either presented a written request for the decision or to those who have recorded their name and address on the forms provided at the back of the room. Furthermore, a formal request is necessary to be advised of all possible Ontario Land Tribunal hearings on these matters, and in order to be allowed to make a presentation to the Ontario Land Tribunal, which is otherwise known as the OLT. Now, if you are following along remotely and you would like to be notified of any decisions or appeals that may result, then please send an email to our Secretary-Treasurer, Lindsay Stamen. Her email address is lsthamann.ca@cityofkingston.ca, and be sure to include your full name and address and the file number on the application. So I'd like to share with you the 5-part format that I'll be using as we navigate through each application this evening. So in the first part, I'll start by introducing the application. So if you are the applicant or if you are the agent, I'm going to ask you to come to the speakers area over to my right, tap the microphone on, and we'll have you identify yourself by name and address for our record. And then you'll have an opportunity to add anything further to the application. Or maybe you have a specific request of the committee. That would be your time to address that. In the second step, I'll invite members of the committee to ask questions of either the applicant, staff, or the applicant's agent. And then in the third step, I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Now, members of the public can line up to the speakers area to the right, or there's also a speakers area to my left. You can tap the microphone button when it lights up red. We're going to ask you to state your name and address for the record, and then you'll have an opportunity to address the committee by making your request or stating your issue that you have with the application, whether it is for or against. Now, every speaker will have up to 5 minutes, and I'll give you a warning at the 4-minute mark. And if you are going to speak and somebody else has raised an issue that is a burning issue for you as well, please don't repeat that. All right, that's just not very helpful to the committee. And during the public portion of the meeting, please don't expect an immediate response to your question or your comment. It's during the public portion of the meeting we will record the questions and comments, and it's only after I close the public portion of the meeting will the questions and comments be addressed by the applicant, the agent, or staff. And I'll be calling 3 times for public comments before I close the public portion of the meeting. Then in the 4th step, I'll give the applicant or their agent or staff an opportunity to address the public comments. And then the 5th and final stage is when I turn over to the committee. I ask a committee member to make a motion, and then we will deliberate on the application and make our ultimate decision. And then we rinse and we repeat because I'm using the same format for every application this evening. And that's about it. So I'm going to call on Ian, our clerk, to confirm quorum. Ian?
Good evening, or afternoon, actually, I should rather say, everybody. I can confirm we do indeed have quorum. Currently absent from the committee is Gaurav Rihan and Somnath Sinha.
Great, thanks very much. Okay, so I'll now call the meeting to order at 5:34 p.m. and I'll refer you to your agenda. All right, so committee members, we've had 2 addendums to the agenda, one on Friday and one around 2 o'clock this afternoon. So can I call for somebody to approve the agenda as amended? All right, so moved by Jerry and seconded by Doug. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your physical hands, and that is unanimously carried. Thank you. All right, now the confirmation of the minutes from the April 15th meeting. Everybody's had a chance to review them. Can I have somebody move the acceptance of those? So moved by Ken and seconded by Doug. And any discussion? I see none, so all in favor, raise your physical hands, and that is unanimously carried. Thank you. All right, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? I do have one. It's for item number F for 91 Raglan Road. I have a business relationship with the applicant, so I'll be recusing myself, and I'll be calling on Ken to take the meeting in my absence. Is there any other disclosures? I see none. We have no delegations, and there are no requests. Oh, I'm sorry, there were 2 requests for deferral that are recognized in the amendment addendum, and no returning deferred items. So our first piece of new business is an application for a minor variance for 3451 Highway number 2. Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for minor variance at 3451 Highway 2, file number D13026-2024, to establish a food processing and catering operation as an agricultural-related use.
Thanks very much. And just for a future, when I ask Lindsay to introduce a file, if you are the applicant or the agent, please do make your way up to the speaker's area, and we'll get through this in a much jauntier way. All right, so welcome. Can I have you state your name and address, please?
Christine Thor, and my address is 2095 Middle Road.
Great, thank you and welcome. Is there anything further you want to add to the application?
Nothing at this time, thanks.
Okay, all right, committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant or for staff? Yes, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a question for the applicant here. Since this is a new and more intensive agricultural use here, I take it you already have permission from the health unit and for both septic and well for this, and there's enough well water for this use on this property?
Those were both conditions that we had in our technical report from Building and Environment, and we have spoken with, we've had conversations with a hydrogeologist, and I've spoken with Brody Richmond about our water use, and we're following up with our septic builder, the person who installed our septic. We don't anticipate any additional uses, if anything, fewer uses of water or septic, because we're only going to be using the facility probably on average 2 days a week, as opposed to the use it was designed for, a single-family home, full-time use.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant or staff? I see none, so I'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public with us in person or online who wish to speak to the application for 3451 Highway number 2? Please raise your hand. And I'll call a second time. Do we have anybody in our room here wishing to speak to the application for 3451 Highway number 2? Raise your hand. Do we have anybody in the public gallery?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have 5 members in the public viewing gallery. I just want to remind all members of the public in the public viewing gallery, if you wish to speak, please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. It's located at the bottom of your screen, this little hand. Thank you.
Thanks for that. So I'll call for a third and final time. Is anybody wishing to speak to the application for 3451 Highway number 2? Please let yourself be known. And I see none, so I'll close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Jeff and seconded by Vincent. Any discussion? I love the application. I think it's a great use of the plan, great land use planning, and I would certainly wish the applicant great luck. So I guess on that note, if there are no other comments, ready to call a vote. All in favor, raise your physical hand, and that is unanimously carried. Thank you. Okay, so our second application is for 77 and 79 Gore Street. Lindsay, can you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for minor variance and consent at 77 and 79 Gore Street, file numbers D13030-2024 and D10011-2024, The variances are to permit a reduced minimum lot area, a reduced minimum lot frontage, reduced landscaped open space, and to permit an increased maximum residential density. The consent application is to sever a 124.2 square meter parcel of land with 5.7 meters of frontage onto Gore Road, or Gore Street, containing one semi-detached dwelling municipally known as 77 Gore Street, to retain a 106.8 square meter parcel of land with 4.9 meters of frontage onto Gore Street, containing one semi-detached dwelling municipally known as 79 Gore Street, and to create new easements to facilitate parking and to allow access to a crawl space for maintenance purposes. I'll also note that tonight's addendum contains one letter of support for this application.
Very good, thank you. And the applicant, can I have you state your name and address, please?
Good evening. My name is David Stocks, and I am the applicant. I live at 74 Lower Union Street in Kingston.
Okay, thank you and welcome. Is there anything further you want to add to the application we have?
No, thank you. I think the report is very sufficient and very well done, so thank you.
Very good, thank you. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant or staff? Yes, Jimmy, sorry.
This dwelling unit, are you building for your personal use, family use, or is it a rental property?
The property is in 2 rental units right now, owned by my mother-in-law, Patricia McKay. So the intent would be to leave them in that state for the time being, and at some subsequent date, probably sell the 2 units individually.
And that variance you are requiring for that property, is that going to affect any neighbor's property, or is it going to affect their value of their house because you're using more frontage, available property at the front?
Sorry, I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Okay, it's the variance you require to use more space from the front lawn. Is that going to affect your neighbors or anybody living around for their property values?
No, the property usage and the frontage doesn't change at all from its present use right now. And so the 2 units are totally separate, and the front lawns and yards will not change in this severance.
Okay, thanks for that. Jeff, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question of the applicant, or at least clarification of the applicant. This is a long-standing existing semi-detached building, and no new additions or change to the exterior or use of these buildings is going to occur?
The short answer to that is yes.
That's good.
Both properties have been there for 150 years and have been in that state and use for that length of time.
So this is a matter of bringing them into compliance with our zoning bylaw?
Sorry, repeat that part?
Sorry, so all of these changes or minor variances are just to bring it into compliance with the zoning criteria?
Correct. Nothing
no-
is changing to the usage and hasn't been that way for 100 years.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? I see none, so I'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public with us in council chambers or online wishing to speak to the applications for 77 and 79 Gore Street? Please raise your physical hand or your virtual hand in Zoom. And we're calling for anybody who wishes to speak to the applications for 77 and 79 Gore Street to raise your hand. And our third and final call, if you'd like to speak to 77 and 79 Gore Street, please raise your physical hand or your virtual hand in Zoom. Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee for a motion. Somebody wish to move this? So moved by Jimmy and seconded by Ken. Any discussion? None, so all in favor, raise your physical hand, and that is unanimously carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, number C, Lindsay. This is for an application for minor variance, 158 Casterton. Can you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for minor variance at 158 Casterton Avenue file number D13021, 2024, to construct a new second-story addition and rear one-story addition to the existing attached garage with a reduced aggregate interior setback.
Great, thank you. And can I have you state your name and address, please?
Josh Adams, 158 Casterton Avenue.
Great, thanks and welcome. Is there anything further you want to add to the application?
Nope, not at this time, nope.
Thank you. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant or for staff? And I see a bunch of shaking heads saying no. So I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 146 Hillendale Avenue? Please raise your physical hand or your virtual hand in Zoom. Yes? Yep. So you'd like to speak?
Yeah, 158.
Oh, I turn my page. Oh, cast. I'm sorry. Thank you. Do we have anybody wishing to speak to the application for 158 Casterton Avenue? Please raise your physical hand or virtual hand in Zoom. And is anybody with us wishing to speak to the application for 158 Casterton Avenue? Please raise your physical hand or virtual hand in Zoom. And my third and final call, if you'd like to speak to the application for 158 Casterton Avenue, please let yourself be known by raising your hand. And I see none, so I'll close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Jordan and seconded by Doug. Any discussion? I see none, so all in favor raise your physical hand, and that is unanimously carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, number D. Now it's for Hillendale. Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for minor variance at 146 Hillendale Avenue, file number D13018, 2024, to construct a rear and second-story addition onto the existing dwelling.
Great. Thank you. Oh, and we have the applicant. Can I have you state your name and address for the record, please?
Pedro Martins, 922 Ironwood Road.
Okay, is there anything further you would like to add to the application we have?
Nope, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant or staff? And I see none, so I'll open the public portion of the meeting and I'll ask, do we have any members of the public with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 146 Hillendale Avenue? Please raise your physical hand or your virtual hand in Zoom. If you'd like to speak to the application for 146 Hillendale Avenue, raise your physical hand or your virtual hand in Zoom. And my third and final call, do we have anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 146 Hillendale Avenue? Please let yourself be known. And I see none, so I'll close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Jeff and seconded by Jimmy. Any discussion? None, so all in favor raise your physical hand, and that is unanimously carried. Thank you. The next application is number E, which is for minor variance, 15 Teresa Crescent. Lindsay, can you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for a minor variance at 15 Teresa Crescent, file number D13029, 2024, to add one additional residential unit to an existing low-rise apartment building, increasing the number from 11 to a total of 12 residential units. I'll also note that one piece of correspondence for this application is contained in Schedule A of the report package.
Very good, thank you. And can I have you state your name and address for the record, please? Oh, over here, yes.
Good evening. My name is Miles Weeks. I'm a planner with Foten Consultants, and my address is 4 Cataraqui Street, Suite 315.
Great. Welcome. And is there anything further you want to add to the application?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. And welcome, Chris. Yeah. Okay. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant or staff? Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for the applicant here. So I'm taking this situation here, all we're doing is rectifying a zoning issue on a side yard of non-compliance, but no external changes to the building are to occur?
Through the chair, so yes, that is correct in part. The application, though, is really to add a 12th residential unit to the building, which currently has 11 units. So there's a second variance to increase the density.
Excuse me, on the next page. There it is. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? None? Okay, so I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public with us wishing to speak to the application for 15 Teresa Crescent? Please raise your hand and just come to any place where you see a microphone. Yep, you want, okay. And just push the little red dot. There you go. And I'll have you state your name and address for the record.
It's Tracy Tremblay, and it's 205 Langfield Street.
Just pull it down a little closer
Little bit.
and speak into it.
Tracy Tremblay, 205 Langfield Street, Kingston.
All right, thank you and welcome. So what would do you have a question or a comment you'd like to make in respect of the application?
So I own the property behind, which is on Division Street, 824. And there's significant flooding. Generally speaking, that property is about 4 feet lower. So in changing the footprint of the external dwelling, that gives more runoff, less land to absorb the water, and we already have significant flooding situations. So I guess I was looking for some clarification on how far back that building would come and what kind of footprint change we were assuming that this gentleman was making.
Okay. Anything else?
Not at this moment.
Okay, all right. So, okay, thank you. Do we have any other members of the public wishing to speak to the application for, 15 Teresa?
Hi, my name's Alice Nicolau. I live at 1100 Hudson Drive, but my two friends over there have asked me to help them in this as they live at 15 Teresa Crescent. There's Gail and Fred. And they're concerned about the space in the area where they want to build a 2-bedroom apartment is less than 500 square feet. The room that now holds the laundry room is going to be moved to the room where the furnace and the water tanks are, and they also are very small. The concern is, what are they going to do to build all of this stuff? You know, they're concerned about destroying their pleasure of the room, their apartment, how much work is going to get done, and I can't see being a 2-bedroom apartment, which is what they're asking for. And the other one question is that they got told in January that the building was sold, but Mr. Selkirk is still showing as the owner of the building.
So you want clarification as to who owns the building? Is that your?
Well, I'm just curious is because they got told in January it was sold, and yet on the application as the owner on this property with the renovations is that it's owned by the Selkirk still.
Okay, great. Any other comments or questions? Okay, all right, thank you. Do we have any other members of the public with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 15 Teresa Crescent? Please raise your hand or in Zoom. And I'll call one last and final time. Do we have anybody with us who wish to speak to the application for 15 Teresa Crescent? Please raise your physical hand or your virtual hand in Zoom. And seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the applicant or staff to address some of the comments and the concerns we've heard this evening. Who would like to go first? Chris?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to answer the question about the owner. The owner information was pulled from the MPAC information that we have on file. It is possible that that has been updated since that time. So I would imagine that the agent would have the most updated information about the owner. The agent was the only person in Dash on the record, so we went with the information we had available.
Okay, good.
I'll defer to the agent for the questions regarding, well, the other two, and then we can come back.
Okay.
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chair, regarding ownership, this happens occasionally. I think that's a matter of city records maybe not being up to date. Our client and the applicant listed on the application forms is Mr. Jordan McGregor, who I understand owns the building. I'm not sure if it's a corporation or if it's his name directly on title, but that is who is the applicant for this application. Kind of going in order here then. Regarding potential changes to the building, I'd like to clarify that there are no changes to the exterior of the building. The only change that's being proposed is to add bicycle parking as per the city's zoning bylaw requirements. So there's currently no secure bicycle parking on the property. That will be added at the rear of the building. So the building footprint will not be changing. Regarding the size of the unit, that will be, the size and appropriateness of the unit will be determined through the building code and building permit process. I'm not really able to speak to whether or not the space is sufficient for 2 bedrooms, but certainly, it could be a 1-bedroom. It will be smaller than the other units in the building, but that provides a greater diversity into the market, so I don't see that as a negative factor. And finally, regarding the laundry situation, yes, the unit will be located in an area that currently has the laundry room in it. That laundry room will be shifted into what is a utility room that I understand has like a boiler and possibly the furnace for the building. I've spoken with the applicant. My understanding is that those will be properly secured so that there's no safety concerns for the residents, and I understand the space is ample to provide laundry in that room as well.
Yes.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. In terms of the unit size, the Ontario Building Code has a minimum unit size, which is, combined living, dining, bedroom, and kitchen spaces in one combined unit. Minimum area is 13.5 square meters or 145 square feet.
And that's for a 1-bedroom?
That can be for a 1-bedroom for 2 people, yeah.
A 1-bedroom for 2 people, okay, sure. And do you have the data there to support a 2-bedroom?
No, I don't.
Not there, okay. All right, thanks for that, that's helpful. Okay, and Chris?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to add on to that, the relief that is being sought tonight would be required whether it was a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom. The density is based on the number of units, and this is for 1 unit, whether it's 1 or 2 bedrooms.
Okay, very good. Thanks for that clarification. Okay, as I think we have had the concerns answered. All right, so, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, there was. There was an issue with respect to flooding. The property floods, and what would the impact be, or what remediation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are no changes proposed to the exterior of the apartment building itself. There is a structure proposed for the secure parking of bicycles on the facility. So there will be additional covered area on the property. It is the option of building services whether or not a grading plan is required or not. So it's possible that they would require a grading plan when that submission for the structure is proposed. That's not currently been contemplated. It's at a further process, a further point in the process than we are right now.
Okay. I believe Tracy's comment was related to the property, if I got it correctly, historically flooding, and would any changes happening on site exacerbate that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, a grading plan would normally be used to determine, I guess, the direction of water flow from the building. The secure bicycle parking that is proposed is to the east side towards the division side. So it's possible that that would be contemplated through that building permit process and through the grading plan that would be submitted at that time.
Okay.
Again, that hasn't been determined. It's the impetus of our building officials about whether or not a grading plan is required.
Okay. All right. All right. And if there was a potential for water to encroach onto the neighboring property, what's the process, the remediation process? Megan?
Through the chair, happy to just jump in here. We do have, as a standard condition that's associated with most of the recommendations for minor variance approvals that staff bring forward, the condition that the owner or the applicant shall demonstrate to the satisfaction of staff that there will be no adverse impacts on neighboring properties as a result of any modifications to on-site drainage. So that's a condition of the variance's approval that the applicant will need to comply with in order to proceed in a zone compliant manner.
Very good. That's what I was looking for. Thank you. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Sure. Yep. Yeah, and that's been asked and that's been addressed. It would seem, from what I've heard, that the pre-existing, the status quo, should not be made worse by what is planned for the property, if I understand. Yeah. Right. Yep. Yep. Yes. Yep. That's fair, yeah, and that's been addressed as well. So thank you for that. Okay, committee members, we're
Discussion.
Oh, any other comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just one final note on the bicycle parking.
Yep.
The applicant is not required to add as many spaces as they are, so from a planning perspective, it is a benefit to the residents that these 11 bicycle parking spaces are being added in the separate building.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, committee members, we call for a motion. So moved by Doug. Oh,
I have a question
well,
first.
let's put it on the floor first and then we'll go with questions.
Okay.
Okay, so we need a motion and a seconder. So moved by Jimmy and seconded by Ken. Okay. All right, discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for compliance, shouldn't we have the correct owner on what we're approving?
You're looking for the name of the correct owner, I believe?
Well, on the application that we're approving, should we not be approving with the correct applicant on it?
I think we are. Megan, do you want to address that?
Through the chair, happy to speak to that. I think what likely happened here is that at the time the staff report was prepared, the owner that was noted in the data that the city has access to, that's refreshed quarterly, was who is now the former owner of the property. And so in looking at our data as I'm sitting here, I can see that the current ownership of the property has now changed in the city's online data that we rely upon, but it wasn't available to the city at the time the report was prepared. The final notice of decision that will serve as the documentation referenced moving forward for the approval of the variance actually won't contain the owner's name at all, so it won't bear any meaning in that regard.
Okay. Any other
Mr.
comments?
Chair?
Yeah.
My view is that ownership irrelevant for our four corners, right? Section 45(1) of the Planning Act. In terms of, it not being a subjective question in terms of whether this is a minor variance or not, it's not a mathematical calculation. But if you look at these units, this may be a smaller unit, but they're all small units when you look at the number of them on the graph. And so my view is it'll have my support, and it is a minor variance.
Good. Well, thank you for that. Any other comments by committee? Okay, so seeing that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, raise your physical hands, and that is unanimously carried. Thank you. Thank you. And the next one is for 91 Raglan Road. I'll recuse myself.
Lindsay, could you please read the application for 91 Raglan Road into the record?
Through you, Mr. Vice Chair, this is an application for minor variance and consent at 91 Raglan Road, file numbers D10-008-2024 and D13-015-2024. The variances are to permit the establishment of a new lot containing a single detached house and an attached garage, and the consent is to sever an approximately 190 square meter lot with approximately 7.5 meters of frontage on Raglan Road from the parcel of land known municipally as 91 Raglan Road, and to create an easement for parking over the southeast corner of the severed lot in favor of the retained lot.
Thank you, Lindsay. And we have the applicant's agent present. Name and address, please, and anything you may wish to add.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Jason Sands. I'm here on behalf of the Boulevard Group representing the owners this evening. The only thing I'd like to add to this is that both myself and the owners have reviewed the 20 conditions that are before you this evening related to the minor variance application and the consent, and we have no concerns with the satisfaction of those conditions. And we want to thank staff for getting us to this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sands. Do the committee members have any questions? Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So this is a question for staff or just a clarification. In this situation, I take it it's quite standard along this street to have quite narrow properties already, and that this will fit in quite well with the pretty much average size of a lot along this street for a house?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Chair. The site is located within an older established neighborhood where most of the dwellings along this immediate area were built in the early 1900s. So we do see within the immediate area lots between 189 square meters to 503 square meters and very similar type lot frontages. So the proposed severance that you see before you is compatible in terms of the lot size and the lot frontages.
Okay, thank you.
Have the committee members any additional questions? Seeing none, we'll open the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone present in the room or virtually online that wishes to speak to the application for 91 Raglan Road? Start with your name and address, please, and press the button so that all can hear. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eleanor McDonald, and I live at 97 Raglan Road. I'll just begin by saying this is super awkward because my neighbors at 91 Raglan Road are the applicants, and they're excellent neighbors. And even so, I feel like I need to just make some comments and indicate some of my concerns about the proposal. First of all, I live at 97 Raglan, and I don't know if you can still see the slide, but the proposed severance, it's true that that lot size may not be unusual, but the size of the house that is proposed to be built on that lot is, in fact, quite unusual. Having only 6-meter backyard, for example, would be quite unusual. Also, my house has 3 windows that currently overlook the portion that will be severed. And they're the upstairs middle bedroom window, the dining room window, and the basement window. If the plans, I hate the sound of that. If the plans go ahead, the proposed building will be about 1 meter outside of those windows. So the building that is being proposed has 2 stories high, will be close enough that if I reached out my window, I could probably touch the wall, which is I think has an effect on, certainly will have a huge effect on the light in my home. It'll have an effect on, I think, also the value of my home. The extension of the house over the backyard will also mean that there will be, a direct effect on things like light in my backyard. So I just want to say I am completely in favor of infill in the city. I believe that there should be more homes built. Troy and Ali, the owners, will tell you that I was very much in favor of them going ahead with plans, but it was only today when Troy went over the plans with me just a couple of hours ago that I realized the degree to which this will have an impact on my property, on the light, and potentially privacy of my property. So in terms of questions, one question would be, on the proposed plan, I don't see what the square footage is of the proposed home, so it's a small lot with what looks to be a very huge home on it. So that's one question. And another question is, I understand that this is a zoning committee that is really only going to look at the minor variances, but currently there are only two proposed windows, which I think does protect my privacy to some degree, on the west side of their house, which is on the east side of mine. I guess one of the questions would be, is there any way to guarantee that those are the only windows that would ever be built? Because I'm concerned that any other windows, especially at that proximity, would also affect the privacy of the home. So those are just a couple of questions. And I'm happy to say more about my concerns as well.
I'm sorry, your last statement was you're happy to, could you repeat the last sentence, please?
Just that I think I've explained what my concerns are: a loss of light, a loss of value, the size of the. I would have been in favor of a house that was more proportional to the size of the lot, but what we have is something that actually not only takes a very small lot, but builds a house that goes right to the edges of that lot. And the last sentence that I said is very happy to answer any concerns or questions that people have about my concerns. My last name is McDonald, if you didn't get that earlier. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the room or virtually online that would like to speak to the application for 91 Raglan Road? And a third time, anyone online or in the room that wishes to speak to 91 Raglan Road? Okay, we see nobody. We'll close the public meeting. And I would like to turn to Mr. Sands to address Mrs. McDonald's concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, thank you to Ms. McDonald, recognizing that this might be difficult in a small community and being adjacent to your neighbor. I appreciate your willingness to speak to this. As it relates to some of your concerns, I can try and address those through this response, of course. As mentioned by staff, we have assessed this property from a land use planning perspective, given the area and the frontage, and do feel it's consistent with the area. It's in keeping with the urban fabric of what you would see or feel in this area of the city, and do recognize it to be a good candidate for intensification or infill. Secondly, to your question of the size of the house, the proposed dwelling is a single-family dwelling, as I suspect you know based on the documents that were submitted. Measures approximately 2,000 square feet and contains 3 bedrooms. From working in the city and completing land use planning assessments, I can say that's a modest house in the downtown core under today's development standards. However, I recognize that you're not considering the size of the house, you're considering it proportionate to the size of the lot. And that draws our attention to the zoning bylaw. And of course, we're here this evening before the committee to seek variances or relief to ensure that this house can be constructed on the lot. And there are provisions that are proposed to be amended, of course. With respect to the interior side yard, 1.2 meters is not proposed to be amended, and that's consistent with what you would see in any urban setting in this area. We are proposing to amend the aggregate interior side yard, so the two side yards combined. However, the minimum interior adjacent to your house is proposed to be complied with what the as-of-right zoning is in this area of the city. As it relates to building height and shadows or potential block of natural light, I can appreciate your concern by that statement. However, I can also confirm that it's built to the maximum height or within the maximum height provisions of the zoning bylaw. So we're not really proposing to exceed those, nor create any further undue effect than what you would typically see in the area. As it relates to the building plans and your comment about window placement, interestingly enough, if this applicant did not necessitate Planning Act approval, you would not be able to control window placement. But the fact that the applicant is before the committee this evening, and the applicant would be subject to these plans through a development agreement registered on title, those plans are what would be considered and be approved by the building department through actual build out on this property. So yes, there's a very high level, I can't say with 100% confidence because I'm not the builder, there's a very, very high level of probability that that will be the plan that's registered on title and ultimately constructed on that site as required under condition 15. I'm trying to recall all the comments. I may have missed one. I apologize.
Am I just permitted to ask a question, like a further question? Because one of the things you said was that there is...
No, it's not a back and forth format, Mr. Vice Chair.
My apologies. It just seemed to me there was a mistake in one of the things that he said, which is about the side variance.
Through the chair, I'm happy to provide some clarity in terms of the variance that's sought in relation to side yard in this case. So the property is located in the UR5 zone of the Kingston zoning bylaw. The minimum interior setback in the UR5 zone is 0.6 meters, which is the setback which is proposed adjacent to the west lot line. The applicant is seeking relief from the aggregate side yard requirement of the zoning bylaw, which is essentially the combination of both interior side yards added together, the intent of which is essentially to ensure that there is feasible access to a rear yard. So that's the specific variance that's sought in this case in relation to interior side yard.
Okay, we close the public portion of the meeting, and we'll move and turn the matter back to the committee. Is there a mover and seconder from the committee for adoption of the staff recommendation as presented? Moved by Jordan, seconder. Seconded by Councillor Hassan. Is there any discussion on the motion? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. In looking at this, we've got 10 minor variances to make a building fit on this site, but looking at it, it's a very complicated issue here. Unfortunately, we're also looking at market demand to go to as large as possible, but on a property that's pretty much standard along the street, and it looks, I'm uncomfortable with it, but it looks like pretty much a situation where everything's been done to make this work. But I hope that the applicant works with the neighbor to make sure that when the building is actually to be built, that the applicant or the neighbor's concerns are addressed. Thank you.
I think when I look at it, my first concern was proximity to the neighboring property at 97. Then I looked at the overhead, and there are a number of properties that are quite close to one another, which would mean it'd be consistent. I think no matter what, there was going to be some displeasure with property coming in here, but intensification is important, and it'll have my support. Thank you.
Any additional comments from the committee members? None, so we'll call the vote. All those in favor of adopting the staff recommendation as presented? And then none opposed. The application is approved unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is number G, which is for 2 Cataraqui Street. Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for minor variance at 2 Cataraqui Street, file number D13022-2024, to reduce the minimum separation distance from the high water mark of a water body to any use or building, and the minimum setback from Cataraqui Street for any building or structure to facilitate the construction of a new deck.
Great, thank you. And can I have you state your name and address for the record, please?
Martin Groot, Abna Investments, 588 Scotland Road, Odessa.
Thank you and welcome. Is there anything further you want to add to the application?
No, there's nothing.
Okay. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant? Yes, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question here or an observation or a clarification from the applicant. I take it this patio is going onto a paved surface that has been there for an awfully long time already. Is that true?
Yes, it is.
All right, so to look at that, there is no, since it's already been a paved situation, we're not, no potential here for an environmental impact on that 30-meter setback from the water, and therefore we're not looking at a situation here where a new development is going to impact the environment. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions from committee members? I see none, so I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members in the room or anybody in the room with us wishing to speak to the application for 2 Cataraqui Street? Please raise your physical hand or virtual hand in Zoom. And would anybody like to speak to the application for 2 Cataraqui Street? Raise your physical hand or virtual hand in Zoom. And my third and final call, if you're wishing to speak to the application for 2 Cataraqui Street, raise your physical hand or virtual hand in Zoom. And seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Jeff and seconded by Ken. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your physical hands, and that is unanimously carried. Thank you. So number H is deferred, so we'll go directly to number I, which is for 4094 Bath Road. And Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for minor variance at 4094 Bath Road, file number D13024-2024, to construct a 14.35 square meter accessory building, 17 meters from the high water mark.
Thank you, and I believe we have the applicant online. If I could just have you state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Stacy Hunt, and I live at 4094 Bath Road.
Great, thank you and welcome. Is there anything further you'd like to add to the application?
No.
Okay, so committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant or staff? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a question for the applicant. Similar to the file earlier, I take it this is already a well-developed property and lawn space, and you're actually not going to be doing anything else on this site that would affect the environment within this 30-meter setback of Lake Ontario. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant or staff? I see none, so I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 4094 Bath Road? Please raise your physical hand or virtual hand in Zoom. The application 4094 Bath Road, if you'd like to speak to that application, please raise your physical hand. And I'll call a third and final time. If you'd like to speak to the application for 4094 Bath Road, please raise your physical hand or virtual hand in Zoom, and seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting, come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Ken and seconded by Vincent. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your physical hands, and that is unanimously carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number J is for 232 King Street East. Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for minor variance at 232 King Street East, file number D13014-2024, to convert an existing second-floor artist studio above a detached garage into a detached additional residential unit.
Thank you. And can I have you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yeah, I'm Brian Bennett at 232 King Street East.
Great. Thank you and welcome. And is there anything further you'd like to add to the application?
Not at this time. No.
Okay. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant or staff? And I see none, so I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 232 King Street East? Please raise your physical hand or your virtual hand in Zoom. And I'll call a second time. If you'd like to speak to the application for 232 King Street East, please raise your physical hand or virtual hand in Zoom. And my third and final call, if you'd like to speak to the application for 232 King Street East, please raise your physical hand. And I see none, so I'll close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee for a motion. Moved by Jeff and seconded by Doug. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your physical hands, and that is unanimously carried. Thank you. All right, the next one is item number K, which is for 2331 Princess Street. Lindsay, can you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for minor variance at 2331 Princess Street, file number D13027-2024, to construct a 6-story hotel.
Great, thank you very much. And can I have you state your name and address for the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, my name is Kelsey Jones. I'm a land use planner with Photon Planning and Design. Our address is 4 Cataraqui Street.
And is there anything further you'd like to add to the application?
Just that I've had a chance to review staff's report and am in agreement with their recommendation.
Great, thank you very much. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant or staff? Yeah, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a question for the applicant here. So I take it this development is only going to be a portion of this property since we do have a site plan in front of us. Even though the criteria here looking for minor variances on do not pertain to the back of the property, we do have to make sure that the minor variances being applied here do not further hinder the development to the back of the property. I'm wondering what the proposal is and for that property, if you can tell us, and what impacts any of this would have on the future development of that back property.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's currently no plans for development on the south portion of the property, and as such, they don't form part of the application this evening. What I can say is you are correct that the variances will only apply to the hotel, which is proposed in the north part of the property, and that subsequent, should the minor variance tonight be approved, an application for site plan control will be required. And that application for site plan control will review the plans to ensure that they are aligned with the plans that should be approved this evening. So whatever is approved by the committee this evening will be reviewed by the Planning and Building Department through the site plan process to ensure that it is consistent and maintains the same level of intent. So what is being presented to the committee this evening will be developed on the property as it's been being shown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. So just a question for staff about this situation. Again, it's not much to do with this, but are staff going to review the site plan when it comes in to make sure that we do not have a landlocked piece of property in the city of Kingston?
Thank you. Through the chair, unequivocally, this one is one larger site where development is currently only proposed at the north end, where access is on Princess Street, and they have 2 existing entrances, which they're proposing to reduce down to 1. The remainder of the site has legal access through the existing contiguous parcel. We would not allow for subdivision or other development that does not have road access, just for absolute clarity.
Yes.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one follow-up here. So we do have a situation here which is an improvement, taking out one entrance onto Princess Street, confining it down to from 2 entrances down to 1, making traffic flow on Princess Street work better. And I take it the configuration of the building going perpendicular from the road is also an urban advantage instead of having it parallel, the hotel paralleling along the Princess Street?
Yes, through the chair. We worked with the applicant to enhance urban design features of this property, recognizing the evolving nature of Princess Street, and those were attributes that we thought were beneficial.
Okay, thank you.
Great, and yeah, Ken.
Ian, your choice of words was access from a contiguous parcel. Do I understand you to mean access by way of Select Drive, which has presumably a 1-foot reserve where it abuts the property on the west lot line?
Thank you. Through the chair for this opportunity to clarify. When I was saying a contiguous parcel, I was intending to convey that it is a larger parcel that opens up in the back. At this point in time, the city maintains what is considered a 1-foot reserve at the eastern terminus of Select Drive. So they do not have the ability to trespass across that 1-foot reserve to access their site. Any access through that would be considered through a future public process, but at this time that is not considered, as was highlighted by the applicant.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Vincent.
I was just curious, which building is the one that's being retained? Is it the one at the long one at the lower level?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. The southernmost building is proposed to be retained only during construction to ensure that there's some operation continuing on the property. But following construction, that is proposed to be removed.
Okay, so you're saying it'll be removed once the construction is done, so the only building will be the hotel?
That is correct, through you, Mr. Chair. So once construction of the new 6-story hotel is completed, then that southernmost building is proposed to be removed. It's only during the construction of the new hotel would that southernmost building be retained and maintained in operation, just to ensure some continuation of operation on the site.
Okay, thank you.
And yes, Jimmy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Just a quick question. Is that the lot has still motel, 7 Oak Motels? There's a building existing there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. The existing property is still operating as the 7 Oaks Motel.
And Jeff was asking for the 2 entrances on the Princess Street. So you said they're gonna use only one entrance?
Through you, Mr. Chair, through construction of the new hotel, as Mr. Clendenning had mentioned, there are 2 existing entrances, and through the construction of the new hotel, one of those entrances will be closed. So they'll be consolidating the new entrance and moving it more to the west of the property along Princess Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and Ken.
Yes, for the applicant. I'm unsure if you answered this already. Has the site plan application been filed? And if not, when is it to be filed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the site plan application has not been filed as of yet. the minor variance application, should it be approved, is required to complete the appeal period. So following the appeal period, the intent would be to submit the site plan application shortly thereafter.
Okay, any further questions from committee members? I see none, so I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have anybody with us in person or online wishing to speak to the application for 2331 Princess Street? Please raise your physical hand or your virtual hand in Zoom. And do we have anybody wishing to speak to the application for 2331 Princess Street? Please let yourself be known. And I'm not seeing any, so I'll close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Jordan and seconded by Vincent. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your physical hand, and that is unanimously carried. Thank you. And our last application is number L for 689 Portsmouth Avenue. Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for minor variance at 689 Portsmouth Avenue, file number D13019-2024, to construct a carport on the north side of the existing house. I'll note that the addendum contains one letter of support for this application.
Thank you. Okay. And I think we have the applicant. If I could just have you state your name and address for the record, please.
Randy Foster, applicant for carport at my residence, 689 Portsmouth Ave.
Great, thank you, and welcome, Mr. Foster. Is there anything further you'd like to add to the application?
No.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant or for staff? I see none. So I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 689 Portsmouth Avenue? Please raise your physical hand or your virtual hand in Zoom. Do we have anybody with us wishing to speak to the application for 689 Portsmouth Avenue? Please raise your physical hand or virtual hand in Zoom. And do you wish to speak to the application for 689 Portsmouth? No, so I see none. I'll close the public portion of the meeting, come back to the committee for a recommendation motion. So moved by Ken and seconded by Doug. Any discussion? I see none. So all in favor, raise your physical hand, and that's unanimously carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on our agenda, we have no motions or notices of motions. There are no pieces of other business. There was some correspondence that was circulated, and that was included as part of the agenda package. And the date of the next meeting is for Monday, June 17th at 5:30 p.m. So right now we're looking for a motion to adjourn, moved by Vincent and seconded by Doug. All in favor, raise your physical hands, and that's unanimously carried. So meeting adjourned at 6:38 p.m. Thanks, everybody.